right, fam, what's up? It's Traveling Sista. If this is your first time joining the channel, then welcome. If not, welcome back. I am so deeply pleased and honored to be with you guys today. You guys, this is Mama and Baba Jahi from Witness Our Divine. You guys, if y'all don't know about their channel, then you're slipping, okay? Everything is going to be in the description section below. I can't talk today. The description section below. I'm just so excited, you know. And I just want y'all to introduce yourself a little bit.
Thank you for having us, first off. Yes. My name is Mama Jahi. I am a mother, a wife, and a sister. And this is my husband.
Yes, I'm Baba Jahi. I'm a father, a husband, and a teacher, educator, walimu.
Walimu.
Yes. Right on. And just a conglomeration of just so many things you guys are. Leaders, teachers, examples, and the premise of this video today is what it looks like to us as repatriates to gear our life to a more African-centered lifestyle, a more African-centered mindset. And I feel like this is important because I've gotten a few people to reach out to me asking how to do that, asking what that healing process looks like. Because if you guys have watched my previous videos, I talk a lot about healing and the importance of it when we decide to make that move to Africa. Not only to Africa, but to anywhere else in the world, but really specifically here, because this channel is about repatriation back home. You see what I'm saying? So I feel like it's something very important, and I feel like it's something that you guys have a lot of knowledge on. Y'all are for real just a whole space of knowledge and a beautiful example of the Black family, of African centeredness. So I just want to kind of kick off. What do you think the most important aspect is that people address about their lives before they come out here?
That's a good question. You want to take it?
Yeah, I guess I can begin. Okay. I think the most important aspect is that we're clear on where our values lie. I think we like to say that whenever you have any relationship, whether it's parent-child, whether it's marital relations, relation between elder and youth, the society is always going to feed that relationship. They're going to give the nutrients for that relationship to grow. Meaning how our relationships evolve and develop is always going to be a byproduct of the values of that society. And I think in the West, we're often indoctrinated not to think of what the values are. We can individualize. We can say, oh, this is a bad person, that's a bad person. But we don't ask, what is the social context that created this immoral behavior? What is the social context that creates this criminality? So I think the first thing we have to do when we're talking about, transformation is, what is the environmental preconditions for growth? Meaning, what types of family dynamics do I want to have? What types of dynamics between elders and youth do I want to have? What types of dynamics between ourselves and our Creator do we want to have? Are we practicing spirituality in ways that are consistent with what our ancestors did? So all of these things come to the fore when you're serious about transformation of your family and yourself.
Right, that's perfect, Baba, because that's essentially what happened with us. Like, before we left, we were in Atlanta.
And how long have y'all been out here, by the way?
Oh, been here since 2020. July 2020, haven't been here this whole time. Like, we haven't left. And when we were leaving, or preparing to leave, it just became unbearable to live in America. Like, it felt like we were in prison, and we were in prison, but it came to the surface tenfold once we were like, we gotta leave. And I noticed that a lot of times a lot of black people that reach out to us about leaving, they're not all the time. There are some people who are like, I gotta get out. But there are some people that's just like, 2 years, I got a 5-year plan. Like, it's just
no sense of urgency.
No sense of urgency. And I'm like, you probably aren't gonna do well out here, because you have to feel like you're getting away from something that's taking a quality of life from you. And most people I don't want to say most people, but a lot of people, they're not at that level yet. And what we try to do with our channel is we try to get them to that level, right? We try to show them what America is, what America has done historically. We use presently, current events. We try to use all those things and put it together and say, this is what you're dealing with. Let me bring to the surface to you what America really is, because it's hard to kind of diagnose it when you're there, right? Because when you're living in it, it's kind of you're just not as aware. But once you pull back, and we feel like the longer we're here, our perspective is just like even bigger than you know it was when we were there. So we have a different angle, and we just try to give that to our people to help them really understand why we need to leave. And it's not about a business move. It's not about like trying to get land. It's not like those are material things. Those are things that can come later, but that's not the goal. The goal is to get out of America.
Right. I agree with that. And in a later interview that I'm actually in the middle of editing right now, you guys will see I was having a conversation with a sister, and she said something that was kind of along the same lines as you were, but it's at a different angle a little bit. She said something like, there's a lot of people running from America, but not running to Africa. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And I feel like that is a very important part of your journey and your decision, because y'all always say you need to know the why, the reasoning behind things. So, you know, are we running out of fear, out of desperation? Are we running with that energy? Because you know your energy is going to determine your whole transition.
Absolutely.
But do you truly feel drawn here? Do you feel like it's a part of who you can become? Because let's face it, it's not everyone's journey to repatriate. It takes a specific type of person, you know, and there's nothing wrong with you or with the situation if you are not that type of person. We need people on both sides to bridge that gap, as we were talking earlier. We need people on both sides. But to the people who feel like they are drawn, my next question to you guys is, what's the most important thing that you look for when you decide to repatriate? What does that look like?
So I think the most important thing is child-centeredness.
Okay.
And this is something that's fortunately is a universal in Black African nations, meaning they center the child. They talk about it in the Kendesi system of the Congo, meaning not only are mother and father there, but you have extended, you have other women to help you rear your children. Yes. I think when we're talking about extended motherhood, this is like the gold standard in terms of morality. What distinguishes us from the West. Because in the West, what you have is daycare, single motherhood, you have unaccompanied minors, you have homeless youth. All of this, I feel, this is reflection of a fundamental moral flaw within the West, because I argue that the way you measure the morality of a people is how do they treat the most vulnerable members of that society. And children are the most vulnerable members of any society. So when you look at how Africans relate to their children, it's a level of moral excellence that I don't see anywhere else. So,
and their elders.
And their elders as well. So I think how we treat those closest to the ancestor realm, you know, that's the children and the elders. That's showing that we have this concept of the circle. I am because we are. And I think that's a good foundation to build the lineage on. You know, we can't build our lineage on property. We can't build our lineage on, you know, inheritance. We have to build it on something deeper. And I think that's what Africa gives us. It gives us something solid and very spiritual, you know, to build our lineages upon.
Right,
you know,
right.
so,
And that was one of the main reasons why we couldn't stay, right? Because we have a son, an older son, and at the time I think he was 10. Yeah, he's 10. And we were like, we cannot raise him here. Like,
it's scary to even think about, for real.
And then even when I look at it today, I'm like, I could not imagine raising him there. Like, he would be a completely different child.
It's not a conducive environment to growth at all.
It's not. It's not. So it's just a different standard, and we're really, really thankful that, you know, we saw that foresight, because we didn't know about Tanzania. We just knew that, and we're going to talk about that later, that intuition. That intuition is what Black people in America are really separated from, right? And that slave experience, that Ma'afa experience, the genocide that we went through, it was designed to do that. It was designed to sever us from our intuition, our reason, our divination,
and revelation.
That's
the four ways in which the Africans know anything.
Say that again.
We know all knowledge that Africans possess. It comes from intuition, revelation, divination, and reason.
Mm-hmm.
The problem in the West is we're confining ourselves to just reason.
Yep.
Meaning when you only use reason, which is the left part of your brain, you're always going to think of a reason not to. Mm-hmm. So you have to use 100% of your brain, not 25%.
Right. So you have to combine the
intuition, the divination, and the revelation. The revelation is just signs. Mm-hmm. And are you reading the signs of the times? Mm-hmm. Like, what is the political environment? Right. What is the social environment?
Mm-hmm. What things are being pushed
What things
right
are being pushed on us?
What are we seeing? Right. What are we seeing on repetition? Mm-hmm. You know, like what is the music telling us? These are all signs. And the intuition is being able to put all these things together and be able to say intuitively, I should not be here. Right? Yes. And that's why you were saying some of us are just, it's just not, we've been too severed from that, right? So for us, like we said on our channel, is really trying to speak to those people to start to help them combine all of those elements of knowing to make the decision to get out. And so for us, we just use that intuition, and I was just like, we need to get out. We need to get out. Same. And we need to be on the continent. And I didn't necessarily know where, because we were initially going to Gambia at first.
Okay.
We were going to Gambia at first, but we couldn't get in because of COVID, and the flights kept getting canceled. So Tanzania is what came up, and that's how we saw your channel. Okay. Because we were like, well, what's Tanzania? Where is that at?
Right on.
And then so that's how we found you. But it was still like that intuition was like, wherever I lead you, wherever you lead you is where it's supposed to be. Yes. And that not knowing, but knowing at the same time. So while I didn't know, I also knew.
You didn't have a reason.
I didn't have
but you had a path.
Right.
You had a vision.
Right.
Yeah. And I feel like that's such a similar story to mine, and a lot of people who have repatriated to the continent. It's not that we had like a specific goal in mind or a specific picture that we needed our life to look like. It was just something almost primal that was calling us back. Like, you know what I'm saying? And when you follow spirit on that level, like, you cannot be flawed. You cannot go wrong. And that leads me to another thing that I say all the time, but y'all gonna keep hearing it because it's so important, is that you have to know yourself on some level. You know what I'm saying? Because here in here in society, especially in social media on YouTube, it's so easy, if you don't know yourself, to be swayed from one glamorous whatever to the next, having the rose-colored lenses on. But when it can be hard to decipher between a real primal longing or something like that, or
implantation
exactly. You took the words right out of my mouth. Like, so it's imperative that you really know yourself, and that you, or at least on the journey of learning who you are, because nobody, like we just discussed earlier inside, growth is not a linear journey. You're never going to be like, okay, I'm fully actualized yet. You know what I'm saying? And learning yourself is not a linear journey as well. So I feel like it's important that you are at least on that path, so you can decipher between being called here or being seduced by,
that's a great word.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Being seduced by the input of others. And I was listening to your video, and how you were talking about programming. You have to really, I'm gonna let you break it down because you did it so eloquently, but tell us about programming really, and how that kind of could stand in the way of us repatriating.
So programming, this is a word we use, and it's kind of like a substitute for social engineering. But whenever someone is programmed, that means they've been in a way indoctrinated to solve the problems of the programmer. Right. Meaning whoever is designing and controlling the environment, either consciously or unconsciously, everything you do is going to be done to accommodate whatever they want.
Exactly.
See? And we're arguing is that if we want to deprogram ourselves, then we have to put ourselves in environments where the people who control those environments share our DNA, share our history, share our psychological outlook, share our morals, share our child rearing practices. That way, consciously and unconsciously, instead of accommodating the needs of our enemies, we're accommodating the needs of our people. Right. So that's the essence of programming. And I think my wife and I, we did videos recently, and one of the major aspects of programming in the West is our concepts of manhood and womanhood. Like I had a video, it's called Confused Manhood, and Mama Jahi, she had a video called Fragile Femininity. And in both cases, what you find is that these disorders, because we call them disorders, they come about because of our proximity to whites, because of our proximity to people who don't share our history and our culture. And the longer you're in proximity to people who don't share your history and culture, you unconsciously adapt their behavior patterns.
They call it shared
psychosis.
I remember. I remember.
They call it shared psychosis. So you might pick it up. We like to incorporate psychology and science, but we give it an African spiritual base. Meaning, because Africans, we was the first scientists, so we know the truth before we even find out the words for these things.
Right.
But what we're just trying to do is bring it to a level where it's comprehensible by somebody living in the West. You see? So that's why sometimes we'll use these terms. But yes, programming, that's a major obstacle to us doing what we need to do as a race, as a people. And the way you deprogram, again, is you have to change your environment. You have to unplug from certain media influences.
That's huge. That was what I was going to say.
You have to surround yourself with other people who are outside the program so that you don't feel crazy. You see, so all of these things, they're kind of pieces to that cyclical growth you're talking about. That life cycle. Everything in nature exists in a life cycle.
Yes, it does.
So you have to figure out what is the cycle am I on currently, and then how do I evolve out of this cycle into the next one.
Right. And the programming has really just, it's taken over our actions, and we really think that the things that we're doing is because we want to do it. No. It's like, no, we were programmed to do this. You think you're this way, you think this is your personality, but this was personality was given to you.
It was installed
into you. And when you start looking at it like that, then you stop being so, because a lot of times the things that we say people have to separate from themselves, and that's essentially what we're asking people to do. Because if you looked at us in 2019, we look completely different, right? But a lot of times people, they're so connected to that person who they think they are, and what we try to get people to do is say, that's not really you.
Exactly.
That's not really you. And this is also going back to the slave experience that Ma'afa is. They had to give us new personality. The personality of the African couldn't live in America, right? It wasn't conducive. They had to break us literally. So these are not our personalities. These are not our values. When you see black people killing each other, that's not natural to us. You see like all of these things, and they're like, black people this, black people that, and it's like, this is not really who we are. This is a different race. They created a new race of people through the rape, through the butt breaking, through the abuse, and what we need to do is say, this is not me. This is not they. You know what I'm saying? So once we do that, then we aren't so connected to this idea of what we think we are, who we what we think we have. We're more critical and being like, yeah, I used to do that, but I don't do that anymore. You see?
Come on.
That accountability can now come in.
That's so important.
You separate yourself and say, that wasn't really me.
Right. Exactly. And it's so hard for people to do that, though. I can't remember what book I was reading, but it was saying, when you take a hard look at yourself and you separate yourself from these ideals that you think you are, it's almost equivalent to death. It is for some of us, because we are so identified with that person who has that trauma. We are like, oh, I'm a broken woman, or I'm a broken man. I've been through this, I've been through that. That is not you. So when you come to that realization that that is not you, if you don't know who you are, you're like, damn, who am I? I don't even know who I am. You're a person without an identity. You see what I'm saying? If you don't have that knowledge of self, so it's critical to our survival that we just start to gain that knowledge of self little by little. So because these are fundamental things that we need to learn, like what does the process even look like? What if I come to you guys just in saying, like, you guys, you know what, I know I need to address these things. I want to make my life more African centered. I want to make my life more conducive to the natural flow of our people. But I'm here in the States, I'm here in the UK, I'm wherever, I don't even know what that process looks like. What can I do? The baby steps. What can I do to detoxify myself? The first steps that I can take to detoxify myself.
That's a great question, Dada. So I would say, I will let Baba also take it too, but I would say the first thing he mentioned earlier was unplugging. Unplugging is huge, because with social media, although it has good elements of it, it has more bad than good, and it's a lot of programming and implantation going on, and it just clouds our our minds.
Yeah.
So we really have to separate. And when I say unplug, I mean social media, but I also mean TV in general. Like we didn't have a TV in our home before we left. We don't have one now either. But TV, especially TV in America, it's just straight programming, right? It's not right, and it stops you from reading, it stops you from studying. You don't have the time to do anything because the TV, and even if it's in the background, you know. So that is really, really huge. And then going back to that, trusting yourself.
Yep.
That trusting, and the more you unplug, the more you'll be like, who am I? And you start asking critical questions. That's another thing. You can
hear these internal voices.
You can hear the voices, right. And asking critical questions is really, really important.
Yeah.
Do you have any other?
I think it's twofold. So one is like you have to reevaluate your family relationships because a lot of the kind of blockages that we experience in life psychologically, they're rooted in our early childhood experiences, things that we went through when we was maybe young adults, and because we don't want to push past that, it's keeping us in a certain space. Right. So we have to reevaluate our family relationships and start to pour into the ones that are functional and divest from the ones that aren't. And I know that's a heavy thing because as African people, we're supposed to be family centered. Yeah. But again, I like to tell people that family is a spiritual category. It's not a biological one. Meaning you can have family that has no blood relation, but they will pour much more into you than someone who is blood related. Yep. So I think that's the first step. And secondly, I would say study. And study is not just yourself, but your enemies. Meaning, before we left America, we was intensely studying our enemies. We was reading Yorugu, we was watching Khalid Muhammad videos, we was watching Shaka Musa Bar Shango videos. And I think when you really get an unfiltered African-centered picture of the society you're living in, it will literally, like, it's like a jolt of energy. And it's like a part of you awakens where you say, okay, I care about my family, so how do I justify having them in this environment where they're under siege, basically? You know, so I think that's very important. Study your enemy. In fact, I would say studying your enemy is probably more important than studying yourself when you're in America, because you're surrounded by your enemies. Because I really didn't get the time to study my African self in peace and security until I got here. I was studying in America, but once I got here, I felt like, okay, now I don't have to be like looking constantly for threats as much as I was in America. So I would say study and then resolving any familial dysfunctions that you have. You know.
Okay.
Those things are important.
Yeah, that's very important. So I want to ask you guys a question. Did you grow up in African-centered households, or is it something that you came to together or on your own?
So
you go first.
Yeah, definitely did not grow up in African-centered home. Very Christian home.
Likewise.
Yeah, I think most black people, like, it's very few black people who actually grew up with their parents, like, knowing about Africa. So very, very Christian, very status quo, don't ask no questions, like,
Okay. And mine's is similar. Mama Jahi, her family is from like the Midwest. So like Ohio, that area. My family is from the South, deep South. So both sides of my mother and father from South Carolina. So Baptist, you know, Christian, very conservative, in a bad way. I'm sorry. But
I mean,
being real,
just being honest.
Conservative in the sense that, you know, this is like, we've all conservative compared to, like, say for example, if we go into a Southern Baptist environment and we start talking about like divinations, you see, nobody's hearing that.
I already know.
You see, we start talking about astrology, or we start talking about like all these things that are native to us. We have a learned hostility to it. So I feel like that's the type of environment, and this doesn't negate any type of love I have for my I love my family, but at the same time we have to acknowledge that because of our shared psychosis, we've locked ourselves away from deeper forms of love. You see, meaning our love could have been deeper if we really knew who we were. You see, so but yeah, my background is very similar. Christian, Southern Christian background.
I grew up in Virginia, Newport News, Virginia. So you know, we all kind of have a similar, you know, similar thing there. And I'm asking this question because I want you to explain a little bit how you got to the point that you guys are. What was that spark? Because it's in inspiration. You see what I'm saying? Like, and that's why I even have this YouTube channel. If I can do it, anyone can do it.
Yeah,
you see what I'm
absolutely.
saying? It's a mind thing.
Absolutely.
It's mental blocks, mental hurdles you have to come over. But what was the thing that sparked you guys, that kind of made you separate from your previous lifestyle, from the ways that you were conditioned to grow up in, to pull that?
So I'll start and then you can pick it up. So when we met, we were very just, you know, Christian. Actually, you had already been very studying, and I had already been studying, but not on the level that it is now, of course. Like more just like being more aware. Because before I met him, years before that, I was very not conscious. Like very just like, about fashion. I had a YouTube channel where I just did fashion and makeup and hair. Like that was my thing. I didn't think critically. I didn't ask critical questions. Just very status quo. So the older I got, I started being like, okay, where am I living? What is going on here? Like why? Like you know, right? I wanted more substance, and so I was already on that journey when I met him. But then when we came together, we started watching a lot and studying a lot together. And we were watching Khalid Muhammad a lot. So we would literally just be in the house watching lectures together.
Yes.
Watching lectures.
I'm telling you.
Amos Wilson.
Shaka Musa Bar Shango, Khalid, Dr. Africa.
Dr. Francis Chris Wilson.
Right, so older people, right?
Yeah.
Older people. And this is really what we feel like what we have like an older energy to us.
For sure.
We have an older energy, even though we're not old, we're in our 34 and 33.
It's the wisdom.
Yeah.
It's the wisdom. You know what I'm saying? And I love that because, you know, it's very important, you guys, like the mate that you choose.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? And that's another reason why I really hold you guys' content and what you're doing just, you know, so highly, because you harp on the black family, not in a bad way, clearly, but you really focus on that, and you focus on, you know, I've heard you guys say, talk about marriage, and I've heard you talk about the importance of picking your mate, and you know, like for you guys out there that are watching, that are still single, that are coming to the continent, like it's nothing to take lightly. When you choose your mate, you choose your path. Seriously, if you don't have someone who is willing to grow with you, you don't always have to have the answers, but like it's imperative that you choose the right one, because it really seals your fate. And you know, I'm lucky as well. I'm very blessed to have a phenomenal mate who, you know, we're elevating each other. So
when we came together, we were doing all this research together, reading books. He was always an avid reader, so he had a bunch of books. He was reading everything, right? He knew so much, and I was still on that journey of learning, right? Because learning was kind of new for me. At that point, I was just still getting into it, but I wanted to know more. And so when we came together, it was like he had the knowledge and I had the fire behind it, and then it was just like it just grew. And we went to Cuba. And I was like, we're not living. Our
first time leaving the country.
That was the first time I'm leaving the country in 2020.
Like,
we had
crazy.
Never left the country ever. So that's another thing. You don't got to be well traveled to come to Africa, right? This was our second time. We went to Cuba and Jamaica and then Tanzania.
Okay, because that was going to be one of my questions as well. Is this your first African country?
Yes.
Okay, right on.
Yes. So anyway, I just kept telling him we are leaving America, and I didn't know how, I didn't know when. I just knew I was like, we're going to leave, and I just kept confessing it, kept saying it over and over and over again, and here we are.
So my journey, it's a long one, but I'll try to condense it.
Okay.
I think my journey started when I was like maybe 17, when I was in high school, and I went through 3 different cycles. I think, like in terms of how I think. I think in the beginning I was thinking like, oh, I want to be like civil rights activist. You see, so I was looking at like Martin Luther King and all them. Then I evolved from that. It's like, oh, now I'm a socialist. Now I like left-wing people like Thomas Sankara and Salvador Allende and Che Guevara and all them
Which
people.
We still love Thomas Sankara.
Yeah, Thomas Sankara still. So then I left-wing, and I didn't, and I knew about African Centeredness, but from 17 all the way to when I met Mama Jahi. When I met Mama Jahi, I was still like towards the end of the left-wing socialist phase. And what I discovered was you really can't be African-centered unless you have a family of your own, meaning you have a wife and a child.
Okay.
When I met Mama Jahi, it's like the stakes just went up. It wasn't abstract anymore. It was like I actually have something to protect now. So I knew I couldn't afford to be theoretical anymore. I had to actually apply myself. Like she said, she put the fire like in me. When I met her, it was like I had a bunch of books, but I didn't know how to apply it. And then when I met her, I was like, oh, this is how I apply it. She was that spark. I was like, now I'm actually supposed to know how to fight.
Because you have something even greater to fight for.
I'm not supposed to debate. I'm supposed to be like threatening.
Right.
You know, like I'm supposed to be threatening.
A force.
You see, a force.
Yeah.
So, and I think once I met her, like, wheels just started turning because when I met her, I met Mikey as well. So, and prior to that, I never was in a position where I was supposed to be like a father figure. So now I saw children was looking up to me. So I started to carry myself as a teacher more. You know, not just somebody who knows things, but somebody who teaches children. You see, so that was all these things is bringing together my African identity.
Developing these things that were already within you.
It's like a gestation period. Like my African identity is coming into form. And then so when we like Mama Jahi said, we watched the lectures. And then she was just like, I remember she was like, she used to say this funny thing. So I used to be like talking about things I would worry about. She's like, well, we don't have to worry about that because we'll be in Africa. This was like 2 years, well over, you know, a year and a half before we left. And I was like, why she keep saying that, like just so casually? Like, and we know as women, we never been out the country, but she knew we was going to be out the country. And what I could feel though is every time she would challenge me, I could feel this sense of, it'll be initial apprehension, but then when I do whatever she was challenging me to do, I would feel more powerful. So that kind of put me on that path where I was like, okay, now I'm African-centered. Now I only want to read African-centered. Not only, but that's my primary thing. And, you know, that's how I came into full form as what I'm doing today. Yeah. Because I have something to defend. It's not just like, I think it's interesting, but I feel my life is bound up into what I learned. So,
and when we got here, it really like African-centeredness, we don't really call ourselves that anymore because we live here. Like I feel like you don't really
walk it like you're talking.
When you live here, you don't have to say you're African-centered because I live here.
Just like the people here don't identify themselves as black, like we just are, right? So I think that title is really more for people who are in the West. And you know, for us, we got married, and then the next month we was in Africa. 2 months later we were in Africa. So our whole marriage, everything has been here. So I think that's also another reason why it probably looks so foreign
and it
to
feels
some people
natural to us
because
being here. This is our norm.
And I want to go back to something you said a few minutes ago as well, which I thought was very interesting, and I want you to expound upon it, is where you said you can't really be African-centered without a family. Can you expound on that?
Okay, so I'm glad you asked that. So familyhood in Africa is different. See, there's so many differences between Africa and the West that I think once we look at it, you'll see how powerful an African identity is, an African selfhood is. So in the West, they have the nuclear family. That's the mother, the father, the child. In Africa, the family, it's like a 5-pointed star. So you have the mother and the father, you have the children, you have the village, you have the extended mothers, and you have the ancestors. All that surrounds and rears the children. They also rear the relationships. They also protect the elders, meaning every part of that star is attending to another part of that star. So it's literally like a big holistic kind of meeting entity, of all African people in service of one cultural goal. In America, each nuclear family is like a unit that competes against other nuclear families. You see, and even within the family, you got competition. This is that whole Oedipus complex. This is the thing, fragile femininity. This thing where mothers compete with their daughters. You see, like all of that. You know, this ritualized fighting, even in our marital relationships. You know,
that's why divorce rate is on the rise.
This idea that you're fighting, it's like the story arc of every romantic comedy. It's like they're fighting, and then by the end, it's supposed to be happily ever after.
It's like,
and we've accepted this idea that fighting in the context of relationship is normal. You can have disagreements, but we not fighting.
We're not fighting.
For what?
Exactly.
We adults.
I don't.
We don't have nothing to fight about.
Yep.
So we the same person. You know, she's just the feminine part of the African. I'm the masculine part.
Like, what we fighting for?
So all of this informs how we think of family. And once we put ourselves in an environment where all those points, the ancestors, extended motherhood, all can pour into us, we start to have a certain stature about us. Right. We have a certain dignity about us. Like even our son.
It's like having a whole military behind you.
Exactly.
Versus the nuclear family, it's like it's just y'all.
Stand alone.
You stand alone.
Right.
It's like,
and what do you mean about the like? I feel like I have a pretty good idea because you know I've been here and I've kind of observed and been a part of certain things. But what do you mean by the extended mothers?
So the extended mother, this is something I talk about in the father trimester. It's a book, it's called The Father Trimester, The Pivotal Role of the Black Father in Breastfeeding. Amazing. So one example of extended motherhood I would cite is after you give birth, there's a 40-day bed rest period. And this is you stay in the house for 40 days and other women, typically mothers, elder mothers, they'll come into the home, they'll give you baths, they'll cook soup for you, they'll make sure the baby is like bathed and calm, they'll make sure they're assisting with the other children if the mother has other children. So all of that is taken care of, and the idea is that in African environments it's communal, meaning you don't have to have a shared DNA with that child for them to claim them as your own. Meaning all children are our children. Right. Not just the children that you give birth to, but all children are your children. And I think what that does as well, and I have a section in the father trimester on this, is when mothers, especially nursing mothers, they secrete oxytocin. And oxytocin is known as a bonding chemical. So when you get a bunch of African women together working on behalf of the child, it bonds them socially, which makes, I argue, African women cultural administrators, meaning everything that happens within African society is filtered through the African mothers. See, and that's why we're so civilized, because the mothers are so involved in the child rearing process that they don't have time to have the same level of coldness feel in the West, where they pull the mother out of the home and they say, you got to go to work.
You got to snap back.
You got to snap back. All these pressures on the mother, that undermines this bonding that you see.
Yeah, and I feel, I was just talking to my homegirl about this like yesterday, and I feel that that's a big part of postpartum depression. Is because you don't have the support system that you need. And and I can attest to what he's saying, you guys, like after I gave birth to Luna, Freddie's aunts, and more aunts and cousins, they were there as well as my mom and my grandmother. They were there to assist with the birth process, all the way up to me bringing Luna home, up until even a month after she was born. And even some tribes out here do 90 days, because it's just, they understand the importance of that, honey. They was feeding me porridge and Tori.
They was shoving food for me. I'm like, I can't eat no more now. She's like,
and I loved it. And it's a big part of why I healed the way that I healed. Living out here, I thought I knew community. I didn't know community until I came out here, and that's the truth. That is the absolute truth.
It's definitely something that we don't really experience until we get here. But motherhood, fatherhood, everything, wifehood, husbandhood, it all is different here. It's completely different, and it's a place where you can root relationships that you value in a soil that's nutrient, right? America is nutriently deficient. It's not a healthy place to plant your marriage. It's not a healthy place to plant your children's life. Like, it's just not anything, right? So, but there are other places in the world where there is a nutrient culture, richness in the culture, that it can feed your relationship, right? And this is why we think that the relationships are failing the way they are in America, because it's not, it can't be fed. So
I think of it as like, if you build a complex system, you always need like some sort of infrastructure to place it in. Otherwise the system is going to just decay. You see, and I feel that's what's happening with relationships in America, because we don't have an infrastructure, because we don't have a social order that supports what we're trying to achieve. The relationships fail. In fact, usually whatever you see happening in the relationships, the society is designed to produce that outcome.
Yes.
Meaning,
yes.
so if you see escalating rates of divorce, that means the society is designed to promote divorce. That's why now you have divorce parties, where people will literally consume to celebrate their divorce. Or you have all these things they have phrases like single married person. This is a person who's married, but they feel like they're single. You see, so we call it like an infidelity-based culture. So infidelity-based cultures, they're also highly consumerist, meaning consumer societies, they don't know how to make sacrifice. They want both. You see, they can't pick one or the other. And whenever you want both, you can't be married. Because marriage is about sacrifice.
Marriage is about one.
It's about one.
You see, it's about picking one person.
I can't get everything I want. We get everything we want.
And what's best for the unit.
Exactly.
And since we're on the topic of marriage, or on one hand, you can look at a marriage as just a piece of paper, or you can look at it as a spiritual union. What is your guys' take on marriage?
I'm gonna let him take this one because I know he has a.
So we have a video. It's called "Marriage is Not Hard," and it's basically a response to that cliche when people say marriage is hard work, marriage is hard, and all this negative affirmations. And we argue that whenever you put a negative affirmation over something like that, it's reflective of where your value system lays. So what is marriage? Marriage for us is, first, it's a prestigious institution for nation building. Meaning, so in African societies, they say the family is the embryo of every institution, meaning how well you manage your economy, the judicial system, the political system, military, education, healthcare, all of that emanates out of the family unit. But the primary unit of the family is the complementary care of the husband and the wife. And also marriagehood is the prerequisite to parenthood. So in African environments, when you get married, it's expected for you to have a child within the first 2 years, because the child is seen as the consummation of the marriage. So if you don't have a child within 2 years, they're like, okay, we might have to organize a divorce. Another aspect of marriage happens after courtship in African context, meaning it's a union of families. It's not just a union of individuals. So you see how this idea of the nation being expanded through marriage. So, and I think in the West, we often look at marriage as one individual. We look at it as non-political, meaning it's about the feelings we have for each other.
Love?
Are you in love? As opposed to we're growing.
Much more than that.
Because love is something. It's like a feeling. It's like airy in America. Whereas in African societies, it's about growth and development, meaning
deeper.
What's our legacy? What are we going to leave behind for the next generation? You see, so, and I like to compare marriage to a tree. And I say, like a tree, it gives shelter and it provides sustenance. Meaning sustenance and shelter for our people. Meaning our relationship is not just for us, it's for all African people. Meaning we want to be able to model what it means to be a husband, what it means to be a wife, what it means to be a father, a mother. All those things are intrinsic to marriage. But you can't really understand that unless you live in an environment where people already have that as a norm.
Absolutely. So to answer your question, what I would say is, anybody that says, "Oh, marriage is just a piece of paper," they wouldn't apply that same standard to their business. They wouldn't be like, "Oh, I don't need an LLC. It's just a piece of paper." You see, so this means that they've devalued marriage. They don't think marriage is valuable, so now they're saying it's just a piece of paper. No, it's not. It's an institution for nation building, right? And it's the prerequisite to parenthood. So when you value marriage, those excuses don't pop up. And also too, marriage isn't as easy to come by now. So now people have like, because I can't get married, now it's just a piece of paper.
I'm gonna blow it off.
Right. So now I've dumbed it down. So really this is just coming from a people who haven't seen healthy marriages, don't know their parents and their mothers didn't teach them how to be wives, didn't teach them how to be husbands. So now because we don't have the tools to do it, now we say this is a piece of paper. So what I would say is, yes, you may not need the actual court documents to be married. You don't need that technically.
That's what I'm saying too.
Yeah, you definitely don't need that, no. But what we're saying is what is the value system behind it, right?
Because you can't reduce it.
You can't
only
reduce
to
it.
a piece of paper.
Exactly.
Because when I used to say that, but then I feel like the meaning of it was taken in a different way, and it kind of convoluted a little bit. Because when I say that, or when I used to say that, I meant like, okay, there wasn't much change between Freddie and I when we had our ceremony, our piece of paper, and you know what I'm saying, before and after, because we were already a unit, we were already building together, we were already planning our lives and making impact on people's lives as well. You know what I'm saying? We had our marriage without the piece of paper. You see what I'm saying? So I feel like in that aspect, the physical paper, court documents and everything, that didn't have as much weight. You know what I'm saying?
But you had the ceremony, right?
Yes.
You had a and that ceremony is key, right?
Yes.
The ceremony is to say, okay, this is a new couple.
Right.
But a lot of people, when they say marriage is not, it's just a piece of paper, they're not even trying to do ceremony. They're just like, we just gonna live together because it's just a piece of paper. It's like, you still had that ceremony, so even without the paper, you were still married.
Exactly.
So the key is ceremony and recognition that we're presenting ourselves as a married couple, as a unit to the community. That's all marriage really is. It's just saying this couple, these two people are a unit and they're committed to each other, and we want the community to know that they're committed to each other.
Exactly.
That's all.
Yes.
So
and it was you know, if you guys haven't seen our wedding video, y'all should go check it out, yo. Like, you know, and I still recollect, you know, on it in such pride and like, because it was done in Freddie's home village in Kilimanjaro, Old Moshi, at his grandmother's house, you know, just the land of his ancestors, you know, and I just felt like it was such a beautiful thing to be married and do the ceremony there, you know, and it's definitely, you know, I understand the sisters and brothers, but specifically the sisters who say, oh, I don't even want to get married anymore. I was like that before I met Freddie. I didn't want children and I didn't want to get married, but when I spoke those things, I didn't realize I was coming from a place of pain. You know what I'm saying? It was because living in the West, it was this hyper independence that I had adopted. Again, going back to the point, thinking that was you. That was me. It was a program. You see what I'm saying? It was something that, like, and they're just so clever with it. They dress it up in such a personal way that makes you think that it's you. And it wasn't me.
The movie Inception literally talked about it. Like, they implant ideas. That's literally what's happening. So
I just wanted to speak on marriage a little bit, you know. So do you guys have any advice in general for the people who want to move out here, who are looking to repatriate?
So we actually have an option on our website to book a call with us to psychologically prepare you to leave, because really it's a psychological, you leave psychologically before you leave physically, right? Mentally you leave first. So the goal is prepare you mentally to exit America. And then when you actually exit America, you'll stay out and you won't have this pull and this desire, this homesickness, you know. So it's a lot of psychological preparation that needs to happen. And so we created an option on our website to do that. We also give advice on relationships and child rearing as well on there. But so I would say prepare mentally, surround yourself around people who want to also leave. Downsize, that's huge. Downsizing is huge. We gave so much stuff away, you know, before we left. So you have any other?
Well, I would say downsize, not just materially, but downsize psychologically, meaning divest from relationships that, you know, are inhibiting or blocking you from going where you want to go. Because understand, it's inevitable. If you're in a society where we're trained and socialized to hate Africa, and you say I'm going to Africa, you're going to attract a lot of negative energy. So be prepared for that, and be prepared to respond to that, and take it as, oh, this comes with the territory. And don't look at it as a way to doubt yourself. Meaning follow that intuition and don't allow doubters to dictate how you move.
Because they're going to clown you. They're going to be like, are you crazy? They're going to be like, oh, you're going to get kidnapped. They're going to be like, oh, make sure you don't get no diseases. Make sure, you know what I'm saying? Oh, you know they hate us out there.
Just, and you gotta have that intuition enough, because that's another thing. Before you start telling people, you gotta trust that you're making the right decision. Because if you tell people and you don't really trust, they gonna laugh you out of the house. And you're gonna be like, why would I think I was gonna be able to leave? You see, so it's a lot of mental work that, like you said, has to be done before leaving. And so what we want to do is be able to help people do that, because I don't really see other people helping people prepare mentally. So
that's true.
We just
it's very true.
We just like, well, we can help people.
Just taking for granted that it's not needed.
It
is.
Because it's so few of us actually doing it.
The biggest part that's needed, to be honest.
But it's so few of us that's doing it, so people are like, there's no money in that, right? right? And it's really not, but we're doing it more so because we want people to see the value in being here and be able to, when they come, they stay, right? Because this whole idea of coming and going and back and forth and all that, like, it's like, you save your money, you know, like that's
save
a lot of money. Save your energy, right? So, that's our thing. So we really appreciate you having us.
Absolutely, it's been an honor. You know, it's been an honor to be honest. And you guys, like I said before, if you have not checked out their channel, please visit the link in the description section below. Follow them on social media. Very beautiful aesthetics and everything done by this sister right here, and you know, very powerful messages delivered by both of them. You know, so you guys, please go check that out. And like I said, links in the description. And thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Yes. Okay. Y'all know what it is. I love y'all. Peace.
Alrighty.